what nowadays differentiate you than so many people in your space?
As a leadership coach and a public speaker and really focused in this leadership lane, I know there's a lot of people that are called to raise up leaders. What differentiates me is I'm really focused on the combination of coaching and mentoring.
I would like to ask you, do you believe that everyone could be a good leader? Is it trainable skill?
Yes, leadership is a trainable skill. My mentor, who is the best-selling author and known as the #1 leadership expert in the world, John C. Maxwell, when people ask, are leaders born? And he says, of course, leaders are born. I've never met an unborn leader.
How do you know that you have a certain influence? When do you feel that? How do you feel that? How to recognize it?
You can measure your influence by if people are following you. If people aren't following you, you're not leading. You're actually just out for a walk.
Do you believe that we are in leadership recession or not?
We are in a leadership recession. Again, I'll refer to my mentor, John Maxwell, who uses this phrase that he says that he is leadership sad. And we have a lack of high road leadership.
What's the biggest lie entrepreneurs tell themselves about the time?
Yeah, I think the lie that we can believe is that that we're going to get there quick.
How to choose the right values you and your company, your team want to represent?
Yeah, values are really important. Especially in business, we talk about things like your vision statement or mission statement, purpose statement, but values are equally as important.
Bill Goodwin, welcome to the show. It's my pleasure to host you today and to speak with you about one of the topics which I believe that it's mostly underrated in the digital world, and this is leadership and everything around, which is your expertise. So, for the right opening, I want to ask you, what do you actually do? What nowadays differentiate you than so many people in your space?
Well, Nick, thanks for having me today. As a leadership coach and a public speaker and really focused in this leadership lane, I know there's a lot of people that are called to raise up leaders. What differentiates me is I'm really focused on the combination of coaching and mentoring. There are great coaches, there are great mentors. I tend to come with the blend of the two. Coaching is made up of a lot of great, not a program, but a lot of great intuitive questions that help an individual get from where they are to where they want to be. Mentoring is about sharing life experience, which I have a lot of life experience that may give guidance to my client that I'm serving. So I would say that's a big differentiator for me is the servant heart and the servant leadership to blend both coaching and mentoring together. And then one other thing I would add to that is I'm focused also on purpose. I'm a certified purpose coach as well as a leadership coach. And so that means that I'm always mindful of helping an individual not only get from where they are to where they want to be, but to have it be in such a way that aligns, I call it purpose aligned. They get aligned with their purpose in doing so that they ultimately are most fulfilled in the direction that they're headed. So that's what differentiates me from maybe another great coach or mentor, is that I'm a blend of the two.
This is very interesting because you mentioned purpose here. Give me a bit of context on that. Do you mean purpose, like why is person doing certain things in their life, like looking for their why they're driven to do the business, or purpose in the way that they so much are passionate about certain things and they doing it in the way of, like, we have so many people who say, like, I'm passionate about writing, so I decided to be a copywriter. Which purpose do you mean? In which context?
Well, I would say this way. I would give the definition that I use for purpose, which comes from the Purpose Company based in Dallas, Texas, is this. Purpose is the best of what you have to give others, Purpose is the best of what you have to give others.
Right.
So our purpose is made up of several different key elements. Without kind of going into the weeds in this real quick here, but there's 4 elements that make up our purpose, which ultimately allow us to give the best of what we have to others. And so, and as a result of living our purpose, giving the best of what we have to others, Nick, we in turn receive something what we call fulfillment. Fulfillment is that, oh, I love what I get to do. I'm in my sweet spot. I'm so fulfilled in what I'm all about. So purpose to me is, it definitely can incorporate your career, your work life, your vocation, but it is far bigger than that. So it's like your purpose is like an umbrella over your life, whereas your career, you may be fulfilling a portion of your purpose through your career, but your purpose is ultimately bigger. The example I would give is, if an individual is loving what they do, maybe they're a C-suite level leader or an entrepreneur, and then they end up, switching careers or switching jobs. They don't stop living their purpose because they're not working in that job, but they may be utilizing their career as a vehicle, as a portion of fulfilling their purpose, of giving the best of what they have to others.
It's very interesting because nowadays, I always like to say that we live in a time where it's never easier to become successful, because simply the marketplace, it's whole world. Previously, like maybe 20 years ago, and I always love to imagine that somebody who manufactures certain stuffs, in order to find buyers, would probably need physically to travel to certain areas, cities, towns, countries, even continents, and to look step by step, knock on the door to find the clients. Well, nowadays we're having a market worldwide. But this shows to me, on the other side, that yes, we have a great opportunities, but we kind of don't have a great leaders. We're kind of lack of company cultures, and we're kind of lack of leadership cultures. So before I even dive very deep in that with you, I would like to ask you, do you believe that everyone could be a good leader? Is it trainable skill?
Yes, leadership is a trainable skill. My mentor, who is the best-selling author and known as the #1 leadership expert in the world, John C. Maxwell, is one of my mentors. And John says it this way when people ask, are leaders born? And he says, well, of course, leaders are born. I've never met an unborn leader. He says that kind of tongue in cheek there, but so there are those people who have a more natural ability towards leadership, but ultimately, leadership is a skill set that it is honed, it is learned, it evolves, and it can be taught. Absolutely. So whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, different personality types as well, there's value in growing as a leader, or your leadership abilities and skills, because leadership is something that can be taught. Leadership, really, as defined, is influence. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So you can use your influence positively or negatively. There is a sense of a person who is influencing others is in essence a leader. You can go to any playground where there's children playing and just observe the children for a while. None of them have been given a title or a position, but you can watch naturally and see who's leading on the playground. It's the boy or girl that says, hey, let's play tag, or let's play this game or that game. And the other children on the playground say, yeah, let's do that. Well, that one child is using influence, in other words, leadership, in order to get those others to follow after them. And so leadership is something that we grow in. Over time, it can be taught, but it is ultimately influence. And we gain greater influence as we gain and hone leadership abilities and skills.
Yeah, and when you mentioned one thing here called influence. I would like to ask you, as a data-driven person, I love simply to measure everything in my business, and I believe that numbers never lie, whatever my feeling is. And this is somehow the most of the leverage where I make my decisions in my business. I would like to ask you, how do you measure influence on people, society, audience, clients, elsewhere as a leader? How do you know that you have a certain influence? When do you feel that? How do you feel that? How to recognize it?
Well, that's an interesting question, Nick. To think about how you can feel or see or know your impact of your leadership. Is that basically what you're
That's
asking me? And how do you measure that?
absolutely.
That's such a great question. It's an important question because if you don't have people, I mean, here's the simple answer. Probably there's more complex one I'll think of here in a moment, but you can measure your influence by if people are following you. If people aren't following you, you're not leading. You're actually just out for a walk, and nobody's behind you following you. So leadership can be measured by the scope of influence that we have in the lives of others, whether it's personal relationships or whether it's professional relationships. And to be a great leader, you don't need to have thousands and thousands of people to be a great leader. You can be leading one or two or a team of 5 or 10, and you can have great influence because the culture, the atmosphere is life-giving. We call those people high road leaders, people who bring people together, people who lift people up. By the way, Nick, all of us are elevator people. Have you heard this? We are either taking people up or we're bringing people down. So we want to be the type of person, the type of leader, the type of influence that is lifting others up, that's bringing people together, that creates a space and a place that when we are in the room, others are like, they feel safe, they feel secure, they feel encouraged, they feel supported. Leadership ultimately isn't about me and my position if I'm the leader. It's really about, if I'm the leader, how do I lift others up? How do I acknowledge others? And how do I make others more successful because of my leadership? And that's a true test of the way that we can look and measure our leadership.
It's very interesting. When you were speaking that, I was picturing myself and seeing myself as a leader of my family in the first place, because I always try to give to them right example, especially to my 9-year-old son. And I believe that those are kind of fundaments which we can later mirror in our business career and elsewhere. When I prepared for this episode, I read that you spent decades leading, coaching, and mentoring others. I couldn't move forward, but to not think on the first place, what is the first time or think you realize that leadership is not just performance, but about priorities, about other stuffs, which is not just, okay, he performed or she performed well, that's a good leadership. In my mind, it's not all about that. So give me a context of that. How do you see it?
Well, yeah. Well, I'll go back to part of my story. When I was 16, 17 years of age, I grew up in Arizona, in USA, and I have an uncle and an aunt who were small business owners, entrepreneurs, and they lived in a different state, but they would come to visit us. And my uncle Tom was very influential in my life. He saw potential in me. And I always love to encourage others to think about, how are you leading yourself and how are you leading others? Because my uncle was an example of that. He was very intentional about his own personal development, professional development, growing himself. And then he wanted to pour into others, including me. I was a benefactor of that. So in doing so, he introduced me. Now this dates me. I go back to the 80s when I was a teenager, and he introduced me to cassette tapes of Zig Ziglar and books by Og Mandino and other professional development, self-help people. And I began to be on this growth trajectory to grow myself. And I think that that's where I began to realize the importance and the significance of leadership, is that leadership starts with leading ourselves. Sometimes we think about leading as telling other people what to do, and that actually is not leadership, by the way. But leadership starts with our own personal development. Nick, most people accept their lives, they don't lead their lives. And there's a big difference between being a person who is intentional about your own well-being, your own personal development. And nowadays we have not only books, and we don't really use cassette tapes anymore, but we do have this great medium that you're leveraging of podcasts. We have so many different ways that we can be growing ourselves, have mentors in our life, have others that pour into us and that help us grow. And so that's where I began. When you talk about decades, it goes back to when I was a teenager through my Uncle Tom that I began to realize the importance of my own personal leadership, my own personal growth, that then I would be able to continue to grow myself to lead others. Because we can't give away what we don't have. We have to grow ourselves first and in an ongoing basis in order to be a good leader with other people.
I love it. You said here a couple of sentences which I will even pull from this podcast as a quotes because they're beautiful. And that one, that we cannot give something to the world, what we previously do not have, is something what I always vote, because I believe that the amount of success we can reach is proportional, equal to the amount of implement on our skills and of everything else we give to ourselves, especially mindset. And Bill, one thing which is consistently on my mind, seeing all around social media, seeing how people react, seeing how people sometimes cannot detach themselves of the business and how they do not even think that certain reactions are reactions which reflect on their business. I can't but ask you, do you believe that we are in leadership recession or not?
We are in a leadership recession. Again, I'll refer to my mentor, John Maxwell, who uses this phrase, that he says that he is leadership sad. Leadership sad. And we have a lack of high road leadership. I'm not as privy to the understanding of what's happening in Europe or Asia, some of the other parts of the world, as I'm in North America and in United States. But we definitely see that we are dealing with people that have positions of leadership, but without skill set and people skills for leadership, and that creates a lot of turmoil. It creates a lot of instability. Most people will not leave a company just because of the job. They leave a company because of their supervisor or their boss. And that is a key component of why I love talking with you today, Nick, about leadership, because I love to add value to leaders so that they can lead others. When I add value to a leader, then they can multiply that value to the people in which they are having influence over. So, yeah, absolutely, I'm in agreement with you on that. That it's just a really important piece that we're mindful and we're growing ourselves as leaders.
You mentioned here that people are leaving companies due to not getting enough from their leaders. Interesting. Just several hours ago, I was recording a podcast with Lenny Ravitch, and greetings for him. Now, he is the oldest person on this podcast, 89 years old, over the 5 decades in business. And he's doing something very interesting. He's in the niche of teaching people optimism and positivity in the big companies. He were working with Coca-Cola, with Marriott, with so big brands, Google. And he told me very interesting, which I now want to ask you and see your opinion about that. He believes that first association nowadays when people say leadership is equal a strict face who is counting every single second of their time and the person who is quite boring in the environment. His belief is that leadership should be fun and inspiring and person who is grounded and on the same level operating like his employees, like people whom he wants to impact and influence, just his skills, his tone, his narrative, the way he do the things are oriented to inspire others to do it on better level and better performance. How this reflects in your business working with clients and how do you see that?
Boy, I'm an Oh, go ahead.
Are leaders nowadays thinking that they should be just strict with a sharp face and in the mood of like, I want to nail this down, so I'm a good leader? And how do you see that? Is that actually the true leadership or not?
That is not true leadership. Just put yourself in the position of being under someone leading like that. Do you want to get up and go to work? Do you want to be a part of that organization? I don't know about you, Nick, but I don't. I want to be in an environment
Absolutely.
with somebody that is life-giving and brings energy and brings encouragement. And like I say, it's the elevator person that's taking people up. That's the kind of environment I want to be involved with. That's the kind of environment I want to create as a leader. And so I think that's really, really an important thing. I am just amazed by the fact that some people would maybe want to take more of a commander approach with that straight face and the ordering people around. That's really I would call that low that'd be low road leadership right there. That's low road leadership, and it's more about their position of authority than it is about lifting others up. There's a continuum or a pyramid, if you will, called the 5 levels of leadership. Nick, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I'll just touch on it here I'll touch on it for a moment. The 5 levels of leadership start with level 1 leader, which is a positional level. It basically means you've been given a position of leadership in your company or in your business, in your organization. It's a positional level. It's level 1. And when you're a level 1 leader, you have to realize that people follow you because they have to. They follow you because you're their supervisor, you're their boss, so they follow you. They don't have a connection with you. They might be neutral, but you don't even know if they like you or don't like you. You just know that people follow you because they have to or they don't have a job. Level 1 is an okay place to start, but what we're just describing right here is that demeanor, that telling people what to do, that strict, no fun, no good atmosphere. That's a level 1 leader. It's an okay place maybe to start, especially when you're young because you're not sure how to lead. But you don't want to stay there. You don't want to stay there long at all, actually. You want to move up to the next step, which is a level 2 leader. Level 1 is based on rights because you've been given that position. Level 2 is based on relationships. So now you begin to connect with the people that you're leading. Yes, professionally, but a little bit personally. You begin to understand who they are. You just shared earlier that you have a 9-year-old son. So now I know something relationally about you as my new friend, as we're working together. So now I begin to build a relationship with the people that I'm leading, and it elevates my leadership from being a level 1 leader to a level 2 leader. And it changes the narrative from people follow you because they have to level 2 is people follow you now because they want to. They're like, oh, I like this person. I want to follow them. They care about me and my part in the organization. So quickly, we'll go to level 3. Level 3 is a level 3 leader is really all about not position, which is level 1. But now we get up to level 3, and it's all about production. It's all about productivity. It's all about I'm a leader working with you, and we're accomplishing things. And as we're getting things done, we're getting momentum. We're getting things done. Now there's a greater respect earned by the people that we're leading, because they see that we're not just somebody who orders people around, but they see that we get things done as we're working together. And that gets us up to level 3. There's a lot more I could even say about that. But then we go to level 4 quickly. Level 4, this is so powerful. Level 4 is about people. It's about reproduction. It's about developing leaders, or developing the people under you, that now they become leaders. That's where they begin to move up in a new leadership position because of your influence over them. And that's a powerful place to be, because now you're multiplying your efforts because you're raising up and developing other leaders. And so going back to what you said earlier, Nick, the person that's the commander, that's the just in your face, that's just the ordering people around, everything strict and serious, those people typically are not elevating and developing other leaders. And sometimes it's out of their insecurity, and sometimes it's out of their lack of understanding that that great leadership is actually working yourself out of a job. My dad taught me that when I was a boy. He's like, Bill, you always want to work yourself out of a job. And that's great leadership, when you're developing other leaders to come up underneath you and give them opportunities for responsibility. I was just recently with a small group that I facilitate on Zoom, and there's different age people in the group. But after multiple weeks, I said next week, well, I'm going to have one of you facilitate the group. Well, we just had our group, and a 19-year-old young leader said, I'll step up, I'll facilitate the group today. Well, why did I do that? My heart and desire is that it's not just about me leading this group, it's about me ultimately developing others in the group in their ability to be leaders as well. And that's what a level 4 leader is all about. And then finally, you get to level 5 leadership, Nick. Level 5 is all about legacy. Level 5 is all about respect. It's like we respect those leaders. Probably this gentleman that you just interviewed, that you mentioned, 89 years old, he's a level 5 leader, where people highly respect him because of the relationships, because of the productivity, because of the people development, how he's helped other people advance, and now they ultimately look to him, or look to a person like that, as a level 5 leader with great honor and respect because of the investment of themselves in others. And so those are the 5 levels of leadership that I just quickly gave you. There's more to unpack those if anyone is interested in learning more about that. But it's really a powerful progression that we want to grow ourselves. Now, there's some nuances to it. You have to realize that as a leader, every person you lead, you're on a different step with them. So if I hire somebody new onto my team,
It's very powerful.
I'm on level 1 with them. I have to build relationship. It takes time. It takes time to go up these steps. But if I have somebody else that I maybe been working with a while, they might be a level 2 I might be on level 2 or 3 with them, or maybe 4 with them. So everybody I'm leading, I have to know what step on the 5 levels of leadership am I on in order to effectively lead them. And then the other thing that we have to know is it takes longer to move up to the next step than it does to come down to a step. So you could be working with somebody over, time, years, and then something can take place in that interaction, and you can quickly move back down in those steps if you're not maintaining and growing to that next level. So there's some nuances there about the 5 levels of leadership. I hope this is beneficial for that leader out there that's saying, wow, how do I develop myself as a leader? Well, it's to begin to look at yourself. What level of leadership am I on? And with the people that I lead, where would they assess that I'm on what step as I lead them?
Very beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing this. People literally and myself got a little masterclass in this couple of minutes, and this is beautiful. I never knew for this pyramid on 5 levels of leaders, and I can understand that quite well right now. But I must ask you the next thing. You said that every time when you meet a person, you're starting from the beginning because you have to build that relationship with them so that you can move further on. But in the same time, if I unzoom that picture, you meet each of them at a different path and level of their life, of their consciousness, awareness, of their experience and skills. how this makes easier or harder your work. Is it easier to work with somebody who starts from the beginning and you've set up this foundation, or with somebody who is already somewhere climbing the peak and you have to fix all those mistakes?
Very good, Nick. I like the way you think, my friend.
Thank you.
Excuse. So yeah, I think how it ends up with is if somebody is just starting in their leadership journey, and they're on your team, or whether they're seasoned in leadership or a particular skill set or role, when they join you, when they come under your leadership or under my leadership, I'm starting at level 1 with them. So I have to begin the journey with each person to move them along in that. Now, I might hire somebody or I might be working with somebody that I already have a relationship with, and I think that's maybe what you're alluding to, is that now I already know them, so they're joining my team or they're joining my company out of relationship, or they know what I've accomplished, so they want to be a part of what we're doing. And so you maybe get a little bit of a step up, if you will, and you're not starting for sure at the first level, because there's already a sense of relationship or level 3 accomplishment of some things, and that helps with the way in which to influence and lead others because of that type of connection. So yeah, it does really come into play as to your connection with an individual and to where your starting point might be with them. But you can have a seasoned leader that you don't know at all, but they join your team and you're leading them. You're going to most likely be starting at level 1 with them, even though both of you maybe are quite accomplished already.
Okay, that's quite interesting. I still need some time to picture this in my
Process
head very
that,
well.
yeah.
Yeah. When we were connecting for recording this podcast, the first thing triggered me is your new book, Priority Living. And one of the things which I found out is that 34.4% of entrepreneurs worldwide experience burnout. You're calling the book Priority Living. Can you tell me a little bit of alignment and leading by priorities, because of a third of entrepreneurs burn out, right? And I want to understand this a little bit better. So
Yeah.
how you got inspired for the book, and give me a little bit of context of this priority living, please.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about priorities. Let me give you a little backstory to why the book really came about. So many years ago, November 26th, 1999, was a Tuesday, and I had a severe asthma attack on that day. At the time, I was 28 years of age, so I'm 54 now as the time of recording this, but I was 28 years of age, and I had a severe asthma attack. Nick, I died on that day. I coded, and I was resuscitated, of course, or I wouldn't be talking to you. And as a result of my experience, and I tell the whole story in the book. I talk about I actually had an afterlife experience, which I think is people take great interest in. Well, what did you experience? So I outline all that in the book. But that's the backstory. I had a moment in my life where I died, and I've been given a second chance. And so I become very intentional that I want to make my life count. I've been given a second chance. That's why the subtitle is called 7 Pillars to Make Your Life Count. So over these years, wasn't planning to write a book, wasn't planning to develop a framework, but it turns out that I was intentional to say, what are the things I want to have in my life now that I've been given a second chance so that I can make my life count. And so over the years, I've been living these things that now I call pillars, and it's a framework that I call priority living. So the 7 pillars are things that I'm intentional about so that I live a fulfilled life. So I like to be clear with people. These are not 7 pillars for success. I'm not saying that you do these 7 things, you can check them off the list and be successful or whatever. I believe you will be. You'll be more fulfilled in your life. But really, it's not about wealth. It's really about quality of life. Priority living is all about the quality of the life that we're living. Many people, Nick, are going nowhere fast. I see a lot of busy people. I'm trying to eradicate the word busy out of my vocabulary. Many people are going nowhere fast. So I like to say that direction is more important than speed. Direction is more important than speed of our life. And that's where we come back to how do we set priorities in our life. So I've determined these 7 pillars that I outlined in the book. There's a chapter for every pillar. Then there's 3 additional chapters. One, how to integrate the pillars into your life. In other words, how to set priorities. Then there's a chapter on foundation, that my pillars are built on a foundation of my life. And there are different types of foundations that a person might be building their life on, whether they realize it or not. And we talk about foundations, the importance of foundation. When you look at a skyscraper, the skyscraper doesn't start at the ground level. The skyscraper starts deep into the foundation of the earth in order to build that skyscraper. And there's a deep foundation there. So the question is, what's the foundation of your life? So for me, Nick, I'm a person of faith. So my faith is the foundation that I built these 6 pillars on for my life. And then the last chapter in the book is all about legacy. How do we leave a legacy? What is legacy? As we make the most of our life, make our life count, how then can we leave a legacy? So that's the backstory. Let me just touch on what you asked about priorities, because in order to live a fulfilled life, I believe we need to live a priority living life. It needs to be a life that we're intentional about our priorities that we're living. And so a story with John Maxwell, I was with him one day with a group of Maxwell leaders, leadership people. We were in Branson, Missouri in the USA. And I asked him, John, my company is Priority Living. And how do I help myself and others in determining their priorities? Of which John said something so profound. He said 2 statements that were very profound. The first thing he said was, a leader's calendar will always be full. A leader's calendar will always be full. So I'm guessing, Nick, that our friend that's listening is a leader. That's why they're listening, and their calendar is full. And they're trying to figure out, how do I not be so, here's that B word, busy? How do I be more productive? How do I determine my priorities? So when John said that, when he said a leader's calendar will always be full, it gave me a lot of peace that, like, okay, I just need to accept the fact that as a leader, I'm going to have a full plate. I'm going to have a full calendar of opportunities and activity. The second thing he said was, the question isn't, will your calendar be full? The question is, who's filling your calendar? Think about that. Who's filling your calendar? Are other people filling your calendar and setting your priorities because it's their agenda? Or are you stopping first to get ahead of everything else and putting in those pillars of your life, those priorities of your life on your calendar first? Then other things can fill into that. There's more I can say about that, Nick, but I said a lot. Let me just pause so you can jump in here, my friend.
Your encyclopedia of knowledge, and I love it. But one of the things is very interesting. Back in probably already 8 years back, when I was living in China and doing my first physical business, one of the people who was in that time, let's say my mentor, I can say that, he told me, whenever he asked me, how are you doing? And I said, doing great, being busy. And he said, busy, it's not what productive is. That's different. And most of the people whom I know, with whom I work nowadays, they think that being busy is equal success closer. And I don't think so. I think that we have somehow, like Dan Maxwell says, to buy back our time, right?
Yes.
And I want to ask you, why is business the enemy of real progress in that way that people stay stuck stacking their calendar and having a lot of things which keep them busy instead of being progressive and being in the way of like keeping processes which leads them closer to success and being great leaders. What's the biggest mistake?
Well, the biggest mistake is most of us, I'm including myself in this, when we don't have clarity of what we ultimately want, or we don't have clarity of what we want with our business, then we lack priorities. We don't have we don't have clarity on our priorities. I say it this way, Nick: clarity always precedes peace, and clarity always precedes success. So, I think there's a desire to not miss out on anything. I want to have it all.
Yeah.
I want to do it all. I want to experience it all. And if you look at high achievers are very disciplined because they have clarity. So let's talk about, there's a lot of examples. One that comes to my mind is an Olympic athlete. Doesn't matter what sport, summer, winter athlete. An Olympic athlete has got so much clarity of what they want to accomplish. So they therefore drowned out everything else out. And there are a lot of things that they say no to on their calendar. Yeah. There's things that they miss. There's things that they because they are focused with the clarity they have that they need to train to be ready to meet the qualifications in order to get to the Olympics and then achieve success, a gold, silver, or bronze medal at the Olympics. So they have great clarity. I think for many of us now in business, you can look at the top achievers in business. Same thing. I love that you said Dan Martell. I absolutely love buy back your time. I think that when it comes to clarity, that then we can get focused on what really is our priority. Every business, you really only can have one main priority. You might have like two sub priorities that align with that, but too many of us are doing way too much stuff and we're not getting traction. So like we are saying here, this word busy, we're busy, but we're not productive. And we're wondering, why do I feel like I'm spinning my wheels? And that's why I come back to the phrase, many people are going nowhere fast. Oh, it makes me sad. It makes me sad when I say that. Many people are going nowhere fast. Nick, direction, meaning clarity, and priority is more important than speed because you ultimately will get there just like the Olympic athlete.
I just want to ask you, because the first time you said that, I wrote down and I wrote, what's the biggest lie entrepreneurs tell themselves about the time? Because most of the time we can hear we have time. Most of the time we can hear as well, oh, there's no time. You have to react very fast. From your experience, is there, what is the biggest lie about the time? Because you're consistently saying this, that it's all about direction. And I agree with that. I believe that, like for what's the name of the guy who was for the very long time the richest man in the world? He became rich in his 60s. He's investor in Coca-Cola. I cannot now get the name. I'm sorry for that.
Yeah. No, you're thinking of Buffett. You're thinking of
exactly Warren Buffett, and he's the proof that it's not about time; it's about direction, right? Because he got successful, very, very late. For most of the people nowadays, they would probably burn out waiting for that success to hit them.
Yeah. So, I think the lie that we can believe is that that we're going to get there quick, that we're going to reach a level of success quick. Now there are people that maybe in different technology or different industries or investments, but what it comes down to is consistency compounds. Consistency compounds. Let's use the example of exercise. I can go and exercise today, lift some weights, and think, oh, I feel really good because I lifted weights today. I really didn't do much for my health because I worked out one time. All I really did was got myself sore. But if I go back the next day or in 2 days and then next week and the next week and the next week, and over the course of time, it's the consistency that compounds. And now I see a difference in my physique and in my strength and in my health because it was the consistency that compounded. So the lie that we can tell ourselves is when it comes to time is that if I just do something now, it'll happen quick. And we don't look at the process that it's the consistency, it's the work that we do over time. I don't know if you're familiar with here in the States. Maybe it's a global story for a children's book. It's called The Tortoise and the Hare. It's about a turtle and a rabbit, right? And I've read that book to my children, and then I've read it to my grandchildren. Nick, every single time, the tortoise who goes slow and steady wins the race. The hare gets distracted all over these things, and that's like the person being busy. I'm just busy. The person who chases two rabbits catches neither one. We have to get focused and clear on our priority because clarity always precedes success. And I think that's a key principle for us.
Beautifully said. And one thing also, which I'm realizing working with people in infospace / coaching or digital businesses, is that people are sometimes lack of embodying the values in their companies and business. I want to ask you how important this is and how to choose the right values you and your company, your team want to represent, because there are so many of them. You on one side cannot choose all of them, but on the other side you definitely want to stick with some. How would you instruct somebody to do it?
Yeah, values are really important. Especially in business, we talk a lot about things like your vision statement or mission statement, purpose statement, but values are equally as important. And so discovering your values for your organization will be, I call them the guardrails. They're the guardrails to accomplish the vision. The vision is what's out in front. Leaders see more and see before. So that's the vision that's down the path of where you're headed. You want clarity on your vision. Then your mission, I call it the road. It's the pavement. It's the mission that we're accomplishing in order to reach that vision. The values are like on the highway where you have guardrails that keep you from veering off to the right or to the left. And the values are really important. So discovering your value statements or your value words that lead to value statements are something that are more important than just having it on a plaque on the wall in your business. It's something that you want them to be things that are lived out, because ultimately they help to create the atmosphere, which we call culture, the culture of an organization or a business. So we can do different types of exercises in order to accomplish that. One that I've used with C-suite level leaders is a worksheet that has all of these words on it, just a whole list of words. We would call them value words. And then I would say, pick 20 of these words. I think there's like 50 words on it. I said, go ahead and circle 20 words. So they circle 20 words. And then I said, okay, now cross off 5 of the words that you circled. So now you're narrowing it down to 15. And then we do that exercise again. We narrow it down another 5, cross off another 5, get it down to 10. And we do it one more time and we say, let's narrow this down one more time. Just pick the 5 words that resonate with you that should be at the top of your list. And so those help us. Now you go around the table, around the team. You say, what are your 5 words? And you write them up you put them on a sticky note, and then put them up on the board, and you see what overlap there are of those 5 words. Most likely, there's going to be some overlap and then some that will be solo words that are said. But that's an exercise that can help bring focus for an organization to bring clarity into their values. Obviously, in this exercise, it takes some time, and then it takes ongoing conversation to unpack what do those words mean to us? How do we live them out? Again, we don't want them just to be a plaque on the wall. We want them to be lived values that are keeping our guardrails on our business life and keeping us on track for where we want to go to reach our vision.
Said to me on previous question that most of the time is about destination and saying no, kind of keeping your focus. One of the things which I realized for doing this podcast for over 80 episodes is that sending invitation with some very high representative people, it's not always easy, because it's very often happened that I'm getting an answer where it said, I'm so sorry, I'm focused on this project right now, and I really do not take any podcasts until 6 months or 1 year after. And I was thinking like, oh my God, are the people that busy? What does it mean distract themselves for 1 hour, 45 minutes or 90 minutes to record a great episode which can send a better and big impact to the audience and listeners? And then I found out that what differentiate top of successful people is their decision making, and they say no, and they do not feel guilt. When it comes to myself, if I would say no, I would feel certain moments guilt of saying no. How can high performances say no and do not feel guilt? Where the knowledge come from? What's the superpower they have?
The superpower they must have is this is what I would say to that, Nick, is that they have extreme hyper focus, which gives them clarity. And when you have that clarity, let's go back to the Olympic athlete or the business person. When you have that hyper focus, now you know this is what's important to me. So I like to ask my coaching clients this question: what do you want? Sounds like a simple question, but boy, there's a lot of depth to that question when you really dig down deep to answer, what do I want? What do I want? So this, in your life, you can get it real focused in your business. What do I want? So there's 3 areas of what do I want, or time frames with that help give us that clarity that we need. The first one is what do I want now? What do I want now? With that, Nick, you get to determine when is now. Is now today? Is now the next 3 months? Is now the next year? You get to determine the answer to your question and the time frame for it of what do I want now. The next area of what do I want is we go a little deeper and we go, what do I want eventually?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just now, it's what do I want eventually. That's a little bit farther down the road. You get to determine when is eventually and what is it that I want eventually. The third question of what do I want that we ask ourselves is, what do I want ultimately? What do I want ultimately? So again, you get to determine when is ultimately. Is that 3 years from now, 5 years, 10 years from now? Ultimately is relative to that individual's desire for achieving that, accomplishing that. So you can see where those 3 questions get us focused and get us greater clarity. And we begin then to be able to say, okay, I'm going to say no to other things because I know now this is what I want now, so that I will have this eventually and I'll have this ultimately. And when we do that, now we go back to our calendar when it comes to priorities, and we begin to be first to put the things on our calendar that will ultimately help us to move forward in accomplishing the things that we want now, eventually, and ultimately. So that's a strategy that I use. It's actually a 4-quadrant strategy. That's just the first quadrant that I coach people through, but that helps us to get that clarity and that super focus that that others are been able to say no to other things. I mean, I even know peak performers. You be aware of some of them as well. You notice every time you see them on social media, every time you see them on a stage giving a speech, they always wear the same colored shirt.
Yeah, 100%.
Because they don't want to make a decision on what am I going to wear today. I'm wearing just a quarter zip today. I like to wear colorful shirts, bright shirts, kind of part of who I am. But these individuals are so hyper focused that they buy multiple of they're wearing a different shirt, but it looks like they're wearing the same shirt because they don't want to make any extra brain power to go towards what should I wear today, because they are so hyper focused on this is what I want, this is where I'm headed, this is how I'm going to get it.
Absolutely. And you just discovered something, and this is that in more than 80 episodes, I'm always recording in the black collar shirt, simply because the first time I did it, I realized that this is something what I like, and I said to myself, this is it. So I'm having a tons of black shirts for these purposes, but yes, during the day I can wear any other. But this is
Nick.
the reason
Well, I just want to say, Nick, I love that, and so you see, you are focused on that, and now every time you're going to sit with the guest, you don't have to go to your closet and go, "Oh, what did I wear last time? I wonder."
Yes.
I want to make sure I'm not. So instead, you've eliminated an unnecessary decision for something that you do repetitively. You interview guests on your podcast, and you've gotten clarity on that. Does that not make it easier for you when you're going to sit down and you go, "Oh, I got to go get my black shirt," because that's the decision you previously already made?
100%, because I always want to not waste time on such things, and I realized for myself that's the easiest way. So I just went to the shop and bought the same, and my wife told me, like, what's the point? And I said, I'll explain later. So that's the point. I just now explained to everybody who's watching, because in every podcast episode, I'm in the same black shirts, and people started to ask me, like, are all of them recorded in the same day? No, they're not. They're recorded in a tension of probably 1 year. I have a couple of more questions for you, Bill, here, which I want to touch. And this is something what I'm not having very often chance to speak about. John Maxwell. You were part of his coaching, you take him as a mentor, you study under him, and many others as well. What principle have you learned from him that most entrepreneurs ignore?
Ask the question again. I just wanted to hear that again.
What principle have you learned from John Maxwell that most of entrepreneurs ignore? Is there anything, what was your biggest mindset shift?
Well, I think John says it in a way that is confirming to what I learned all those years ago as a teenager with my uncle. And John has this phrase. One of his books is called The 15 Undeniable Laws of Growth. The 15 Laws of Growth. And the first law in the laws of growth is the law of intentionality. And the law of intentionality says that we grow older naturally. We don't grow better unless we are intentional. And so that goes back to when I was a teenager, learning from my uncle, learning from Zig Ziglar cassette tapes and books, is that we have to grow ourselves first. We have to be intentional about reading, about podcasts, about mentors, about conferences. We have to be intentional about growing ourselves. And I think that's part of the reasons why people get so much value, Nick, out of joining us here on your podcast, is because it's a conversational way to grow ourselves, to learn and then apply things that we learn because we're growing ourselves. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned from John Maxwell that has been confirming to me, that has been so impactful, that I am a person that is intentional about reading and doing various things because I put myself first so that I can grow myself in order to lead others. And that's been very influential in my life.
Beautiful. What is the relationship between faith and performance in leadership? How do you see that? Are people who are more religious, if we can say more, let's say religious, are performing better? Are they better leaders than people who are atheists or non-believer, non-religious people?
Well, I don't know if it's better. I would just say it's different. I would say that there is, again, some foundation to our approach to life. I think we can look through the lens of our leader, and in this case, for me as a Christian, through the lens of the scriptures of Bible, and through the example of Jesus Christ, who was always about loving others, lifting others up, bringing people together, healing people, and ultimately, as a fully God and fully man, he paid the ultimate price of sacrificing himself for us on the cross so that we could be forgiven and have the gift of eternal life. So I think the example for me of having a relationship, not just a religious mindset or religious belief system, but a relationship with my Creator, has given me the way that I want to treat other people, the way I want to encourage other people, the way I want to be a servant to other people. Again, it's about lifting others up, not about lifting me up. It's not about trying to put the focus on me, but the focus on helping others become better versions of themselves. And so it's with that perspective or mindset that is how I live my life and how I lead others, and that is foundational because of my faith.
Beautiful. And I want to touch a couple of things about you personally, in the way that you definitely inspired me in this podcast episode. You've inspired so many other people, and I believe all our listeners and viewers. And you built career helping others to define what truly matters. What truly matters to you right now?
Oh, thank you for asking. That means a lot to me. You know, what really matters to me is that I'm living my purpose, and my purpose is to add value to others, is to lift others up, it's to equip others. So for many years, my backstory, Nick, as a leader, I was in vocational ministry. I was a pastor of a church for many years, and I like to say that your now leads to your next. And that's what's been the case for me and so many people that I know, is that your now leads to your next. And so all the years of developing leaders through that sphere of a nonprofit and faith-based world has led me to what I'm doing now, working with C-suite level leaders, working with entrepreneurs, working with mid-level managers, working with small business owners, and because I feel that I have something to offer, and I'm in my 50s now, so I'm at a stage of life. I'm kind of a fatherly figure, to where I love to work with those in their 20s and 30s and 40s that are growing themselves or growing businesses themselves. And I have a little bit of a gray on my chin and a little bit of life experience behind me that gives me the opportunity to do what I really feel called to in this season, and what's really important to me in this season. And that's not so much building up myself, or promoting myself, but it's about lifting others up. And so that's why I would say that's what I'm passionate about. That's what gives me fulfillment today. And if I can serve the person listening today personally with coaching or with your company, that will help me live the fulfilled life that I feel that I'm called to live at this stage in my life.
Beautiful. I know when I listen to podcast episodes, I start questioning myself, listening to certain topics. I know that nowadays somebody definitely question themselves about their being overwhelmed, off the track, unsure how to improve their leadership skills. What's the very first step you would advise them to do, and from where to start?
Well, I think it starts with getting clarity. Clarity always precedes peace. Clarity always precedes success. So it's getting clear. Maybe it's, going back in our conversation earlier, those questions about what do I want? What do I want now? What do I want eventually? What do I want ultimately? And then begin to make some course corrections based upon that. If you're interested in a further coaching framework to that, reach out to me, because there are 3 other quadrants to that activity or that exercise. But I think that's where I would advise someone to start. And then it's looking at your calendar and it's saying, okay, how do I get ahead of everything? Maybe I got to go out 3 months or whatever because I got so much on the calendar, but I need to start putting my priorities on the calendar first so that other things can come in around them, and I can begin to say no to some things and live the life that you're called to live. You only live once. I happen to get a second chance here, but you want to make your life count, and you don't have to die to want to make your life count. All of us, Nick, want to make our life count. And so now's a great time to, if you're not already, now's a great time to start a life of priority living.
That's beautiful. That's very, very, very beautiful what you said. And for the very last, I have only one question. And this question comes from that every time when I'm having a guest on the podcast, I ask him to leave behind the camera a question for the next guest so that we can discover what is the opinion and get back to that guest and tell him the answers. So this morning, Lenny Ravich left a question to you. And his question is, what is the biggest mindset shift belief when it comes to money, which you ever experienced in your career?
Well, I'll say this. There's many mind shifts when it comes to money for me. This one I'll say because it's real fresh on my mind when you ask the question, and that is nobody cares more about your management of your money than you should. It's important to have financial planners. It's important to have tax advisors. It's important to have people who help you oversee things, maybe with investments. But at the end of the day, we each are responsible ourselves, because nobody is going to care more about the management and risk management of your money than you are. So it's something that we each have to take serious, the way in which we handle things. So I think that was a mind shift for me, because I was thinking, well, I get to a point and then I have other people that are experts, more expertise than me, and by all means, I'm so grateful for that. But they are the ones that can, help me manage. And ultimately, they don't really even probably care as much about my resources than I do. And so I have to take that very serious. I'll add one other one, and that is, well, 2 other ones. Oh my gosh, Nick. Another one here is you can't outgive God. You can't outgive God. So when you're generous, by the way, the 7th pillar of the 7 pillars is give. It's all about generosity. You can't outgive God. So when you're generous and you help other people with your resources, it's the Bible says, when you do unto the least of these, you've done it unto me, meaning you've done it unto Jesus. So you can't outgive God. When you help other people, when you use your resources for good, you know that it's always a good thing, because God has given us so much. We can't outgive Him. So that's the second one. And then the last one I'll say is, this is a Dave Ramsey quote. We all have to live like no one else now, so that we can live like no one else later. When we're looking at our money, we have to live like no one else now, and so that we can live like no one else later. Those are the 3 that jump to my mind right away with that great question.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing this, Bill. It was a pleasure having you as a guest of this podcast episode. And for all of you guys who listened or watched this podcast episode, check the description box. I really put there some links, as well as a link to the brand new and fresh out of the press book, Priority Living, which you just wrote. And remember, for just a couple of bucks, you're buying like decades of his life experience and expertise, which is very beautiful. Bill, thank you so much for being today here, and thank you for all your wisdom which you shared here. It was a pure masterclass. I cannot say that it was just a podcast episode. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Nick. What a joy to be with you.
It's my pleasure.